Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to touch base with you on the pages that we've read up to at this point, up to page 45, the end of chapter 4, and just basically provide you with some insights on some of the highlights that I'd like us to be aware of. Make sure that you have, paid some attention to. Starting out on page 18, this is in chapter 2, after he discusses his essay reluctantly with Spencer. We get our first mention of the ducks, and you got to make sure you notice these key images that get a lot of attention. It's almost like I don't know. I mean, I know in Miss Cruz's class when you guys read Romeo and Juliet, you look closely at some of the film renditions' use of water. You might also look at some of the significance that people can place on the stars, or just different motifs that run through. And this isn't so much a motif for Holden, but he keeps asking this question to different people. And he didn't ask it to anyone here. He just kind of thought about it. And as he was saying, he says, "I was wondering where the ducks went when the lagoon got all icy and frozen over." And you'll see more about kind of how that could possibly have significance. But he is on his way out of Pensy. You could say to yourself, well, ducks have to leave at certain times out of necessity. And so Holden isn't exactly in the same situation, but he is leaving. After that, we do hear about his different schools. On that next page, 19 in my text, and he's talking about Elkton Hills. He says, "I was surrounded by phonies." When he says, one of the biggest reasons I left Elkton Hills was because I was surrounded by phonies. Perhaps our first instance, or, just getting started. It's kind of like Gatsby and Old Sport. You're going to have Holden having phonies, and he says that's all. They were coming in the goddamn window. And, windows are, I think, interesting. Windows are somewhat archetypal. Are they an entrance? Are they an exit? In this case, I think windows has an interesting, ominous meaning throughout the novel, and I want you guys to see if you can keep track of that. On this same page, he says toward the bottom of that paragraph that line's in, "It makes me so depressed I go crazy." There are some really interesting examples where Holden refers to his mental health. And he is a frustrated kid. And what's interesting is if you look ahead, I'm referring now to the discussion with Ackley and Stradlater. He's an incredibly clean person. He talks about how Ackley puts Ackley puts things back in the wrong place. Like, he'll move your stuff around and he won't put it back in the right place. Now, I mean, if he were to, let's say, put it back on the other side of the room, I think anybody would feel the same way. But I think it really suggests that Ackley just isn't putting it back in the exact same place. And Holden also makes other comments about his hygiene, and also when Stradlater, his sexy guy, as the way Holden describes people, he's a real sexy guy. Maybe his attitude, maybe his demeanor. He could also be complimenting on his looks, but he also discusses how disgusting his razor is, and that just appalls him. That could be a comment on his socioeconomic regularities. He doesn't use a razor more than once. I discard that thing after the green strip is just barely lightened to get rid of it. But I think it could have something just more to do with how Holden is generally a really clean person. And, how is that significant? Oh, I mean, you'll have to see as the text goes on. I don't want to sit here and talk about things we haven't gotten to. But I know that many of you guys, like if I'm looking here at the end of chapter 2, and he's saying goodbye to Mr. Spencer, and he is narrating, and he says, "Then we shook hands and all that crap. Made me feel sad as hell, though." I love this. I mean, and all that crap. I mean, he'll just throw things in, and it ends even better. I'm pretty sure you yell "good luck" at me. I hope not. I hope to hell not. I'd never yell "good luck" at anybody. It sounds terrible when you think about it. I know I've heard. Oh God, it's a classic reference. The Rock with Sean Connery. And he says to Nicolas Cage, everyone's favorite actor, Nicolas Cage, yeah, that he says to Nicolas Cage's character, says, "I'll do my best," and Sean Connery turns around and says, "Your best," and he basically goes on in his colorful and school inappropriate way to describe how you don't tell people to do their best. That you'll do their best. I'll do my best. He's like, I don't want your best. And I think that's very similar to what Holden's saying here. The inauthenticity of saying good luck is kind of frustrating for most. I'm going to try to speed this up a little bit. I don't have the dynamic ability to include a bunch of images. I just wanted to get some commentary here because we won't see each other because we have a test tomorrow. So, like I mentioned in class, chapter 3, love this first sentence. I'm the most terrific liar you ever saw in your life. It's very similar to all Cretans are liars, and a person from Crete is telling you this. Holden's our narrator, and he's telling us he's a liar. Thanks for just really messing with our heads. Is he lying about being a liar? Is he just exaggerating? Maybe he's a bad liar, and he thinks he's only a good liar. I don't know. But it definitely, I think, just makes us think a little bit independently. More independently, and I think that's not a bad thing. We can't just let Holden do our thinking for us. One thing I really like on that next page there, to chapter 3, it's kind of in the middle. He's talking about the alumni, Awesomeburger, and he came up to school in this big goddamn Cadillac, and then he starts to exaggerate, and I'm just showing you this to show you how he exaggerates. Then the next morning in the chapel, he made a speech that lasted about 10 hours. All right. No freaking way it lasted 10 hours. You'd have to use the restroom. The speaker would have to use the restroom or eat. I mean, it's not like it actually lasts that long. 50 corny jokes. I mean, he really exaggerates. And I love this line. He said he talked to Jesus all the time. This italics here. He's just like, no way. He calls him phony right after that, and it just really, I think, displays how he doesn't admire BS at all, and that's almost redundant. I mean, for me to just say that at all. We introduce ourselves to the red hunting cap. Yeah, it keeps coming back. John Green has some interesting analysis of the red hunting cap. I don't want to wear on it. It's going to keep coming up. There's some significance to it. I want to point out some of these things that he says that are quite awesome in specific context about people. He's like, I hate people that make me do this. I hate people that make me do that. They'll always be the kind of person that does this. He makes these really broad, sweeping claims as if, for instance, he's met a lot of people in his life. And what's interesting is, as a young person at this time, 16 years old, I mean, he just hasn't met as many people, and yet he has the opinions, I think, internally in his head of a person that's lived a very long time. I'm looking at page 27 here, and he's talking to Ackley about how the game went, and he's like, what he said? He always made you say everything twice. And you get kind of this interesting thing. Oh, and on that same page, there's the put it back in the wrong place bit. And so, again, he basically said this, you couldn't read anything with a guy like Ackley around. It was impossible. It's like there's this mold of this person, and Holden understands the mold, and the Ackley just fits right into that. He's one of those people, and it's almost like bigoted, Just lock them up, put them away. Those people you can't trust. Those people, it brings out my inner Patrick Stewart there, Patrick Stewart, yeah. I'm doubting it. I'm trying to think. It's a Wonderful Life. That guy. What's his name? My head. It's crazy. So he points out how he never sat in a chair. All these little quirks that I think are pretty important to really kind of understand Holden. He's got this weird, yes, he's privileged, but then he has these weird quirks about the cleanliness. He really doesn't like Ackley's hygiene. I've already said that. Sorry, I'm starting to repeat myself. But the Jane Gallagher reference is also very significant. I thought it was really interesting. I just want to go right to that place there, where he's on page 41, very close to the end of chapter 4, and you get a little bit about his background, his family life. When he says her mother belonged to the same club we did. I used to caddy once in a while just to make some dough. I caddied for her mother a couple of times. She went around in about 170 for 9 holes. Now, I really, this stood out. Obviously, a club, likely a country club, some sort of private institution, which are very, very pricey. And then caddying, having someone caddy for you, is a sign of, again, someone with money. Most people will carry their own bags or whatever, but this mother does not. And she is an exceptionally bad golfer. I mean, that's for sure. 170 on 9 holes, you would be getting just under, you'd actually be 19 strokes a hole, except one stroke, you had 18 strokes. That's like going to mini golf and missing 10 times, like getting 10s on every hole. I mean, I'm just trying to equate the extra distance on a real hole. So, just a little bit there in case you were like caddying 170. What are you talking? 9 holes. It's a golf reference there, but I think the key thing we could take from here is we get, again, a little bit more information, just how Holden's lifestyle was. And again, we get that. We also, this stereotype about Stradlater never giving their regards to Jane Gallagher. Again, fitting into this person. Oh gosh, there's something completely gnarly here on page 42. It's just before the end of chapter 2. When talking about Jane's stepfather, there's this odd kind of recurrent awkwardness with sexuality in the text, whether it be Holden with his own and like people or other people's. And in this one, he says, skinny guy with harried legs. Her mother was married again to some booze hound. Skinny guy with hairy legs. I remember him. He wore shorts all the time. Jane said he was supposed to be a playwright or some goddamn thing, but all I ever saw him do was booze all the time and listen to every single goddamn mystery program on the radio and run around the goddamn house naked with Jane around and all. Now, is he exaggerating? Like, is not having a shirt on naked, like how he didn't like Stradlater, showing off his muscles, or his, how did he call it, his sexy build? Oh yeah, right there. He walks around, I'm looking at the end of chapter 3, he walked around in his bare torso because he thought he had a damn good build. He did too, I have to admit it. That's interesting, very complimentary. He notices people's looks and aesthetics quite well. He interrogates, he like just really rips into Ackley's acne and being an acne participant, I'll say. Myself, I take personal offense to that, Holden. Come on there, buddy. Genetics! And defensive much, Mr. Reed? No. Only slightly resentful. And here we see, he says he has a bare chest, so it would actually be more textually possible, I think, to interpret him as not exaggerating when he says that her stepdad ran around the house naked, and so you're like, ugh, There are some interesting cases, though, that continue to come up. That's perhaps our first instance of clear, awkward sexuality. The other instance would be perhaps Stradlater's insinuation that she only signed out for 9:30. Oh, man. But that probably is more innocent, again, just like, wanting some time alone to, like, make out or something. I mean, you don't have to go to these places. But when he says that an adult ran around naked around her, that's like, those are times when Holden doesn't draw much attention to it, but he does italicize her name to say a girl, like his stepdaughter. That's wrong. He definitely sees that. Basically, he keeps thinking about Jane, and he really, really, I think, tries to put it out of his head because he was glad to see Ackley. And he says this at the end of 4. For once in my stupid life, I was really glad to see him. I mean, that's pretty significant, guys. Not only does he call his life stupid, but he also was glad to see Ackley. And based on what we know about his feelings, Ackley kid is not exactly his favorite person. So just a little review there, a little talk. If we can't have class, I'd like us to have this as a substitute. And of course, all your awesome thoughts. I want you to bring those in, and just keep going with the text. I mean, I think it's pretty exciting whenever we get to read a book that doesn't take itself too seriously. So, y'all have a great night. Thank you.